everybody, so today we're going to look at managing acute or new injuries and what we should be doing when that happens. So you've probably heard the acronym R.I.C.E. It's been around for like almost 50 years now. It stands for rest, ice, compression, and elevation. The physician who actually did the research behind that has since recanted a portion of this information around 2015. And although that's happened, there are still a lot of people out there that are using R.I.C.E. after an injury and recommending other folks to use R.I.C.E. And so today we're going to look at why we don't want to really ice after an injury and what we should be following instead with an acute injury. So as far as ice goes, putting ice on an area does constrict the blood vessels around it. And so yes, that does help manage or decrease swelling, but what that's actually doing is limiting the good cells that need to come into that area that helps stimulate the healing response, and that's done through inflammation. So if we're not allowing that to happen, we're actually suppressing our immune system and we're not allowing the healing to happen as it should. So instead, in those first 1 to 3 days, we want to follow P.E.A.C.E, which just means protect. Now that does not mean fully rest and guard, but we do want to protect. Elevation is still good within reason. Avoiding anti-inflammatories like ibuprofen and ice, because now we know that suppresses our immune response. Compression is still good, like a compression garment, and education. All those are good in the first few days. And then once we get out of those first few days, we want to move into a more active approach to recovery. And that looks like loading the tissues, keeping an optimistic mindset, because we know that those who are optimistic recover better and faster. Vascularization, which just means we need to get some cardiovascular exercise going in a way that's pain-free and tolerable by the area that we hurt. And exercise. And so next time you have an acute injury, make sure you're following Peace and Love instead of R.I.C.E.